And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I know it has been a very long and intensive day, so our online audience is hopefully still with us, but many of our live audience seem to still be out grabbing a cup of coffee or tea. We're just going to leave a couple of the doors in the back open and hope that more people will join us over time. As our discussions throughout this intensive day have shown, every region of the world, every country has its own unique situation when it comes to the energy transition. That was underlined just now by the African leaders we had on our Europe-Africa panel. And that unique situation reflects its geography, its infrastructure, its workforce, its demand, as well as its own unique renewable potential. Which means, and we heard this very clearly this morning from Germany's foreign minister, one size does not fit all. And that, in fact, is the title of this final panel on day one of the Berlin Energy Transition Dialogue. If we are serious about massively upscaling the phase-out of fossil fuels and the phase-in of renewables, then approaches to the energy transition must be tailored to countries' unique needs. And in fact, from ever larger renewable power plants to thousands of decentralized private micro-generation facilities, there are many paths available to get to the goal. In this session, we will explore those potential paths in more detail, asking which political, financial, and social frameworks most effectively set the stage for boosting renewables deployment, what particular tools and measures can boost uptake across all sectors, from infrastructure and technology to distribution and demand management, how we ensure that the transition provides good jobs, including for workers coming from sectors like fossil fuels who may need retraining as their old sectors wind down. Those are our questions, and we have a fantastic panel with us to address them. And I will start to introduce them now, beginning here on my left with His Excellency Ibrahim Yakuba. He is Minister of Energy and Renewable Energy from the Republic of Niger. He previously served as Niger's Minister of Foreign Affairs. He will speak in French, and we do have translation available. However, it seems that the staff have taken away the headsets from many of the seats. If you would like a headset and you don't have one now, please go to the back of the room, and I believe you will find them either at the very back of the room or outside the doors. So please do get that, because we don't want you to miss a word of our discussions. Next to Minister Yakuba is His Excellency Pərviz Şahbazov. He is Minister of Energy of Azerbaijan. He has held high-level diplomatic posts in Germany and his own country, as well as at the OSCE. Welcome to you. Next up is Mika Obayashi. She is director at the Renewable Energy Institute, a Tokyo-based nonprofit think tank. Before joining it, she worked with the International Renewable Energy Agency, IRENA, as policy and project regional manager for Asia-Oceania. Next to her is seated Christopher Butzau. He is Director General of the Danish Energy Agency. He has extensive government experience in energy, utilities, and climate, and began his career at the Ministry of Finance. Welcome. It's a great pleasure to introduce Barbara Gregor. She is Chief Financial Officer at the globally active solar energy equipment supplier SMA Solar Technology, based here in Germany, and she previously held high-level management positions at ThyssenKrupp Materials Trading. Then, next to her is Yaakov Kobi Blitzstein. He is Director General of Israel's Ministry of Energy and Infrastructure. He has served in high-level positions in the Ministry of Transportation and the Ministry of Finance, and has extensive experience in infrastructure development and planning. And finally, on this very large and high-level panel, it's a pleasure to welcome Ramsey Montes Casadillo. He is Director of National Energy Policy and Strategy of the Ministry of Energy and Mines in Cuba, and he will speak to us in Spanish. And again, we have translation, but you'll need to find a headset. Before we launch our first round of discussion, I want to quickly ask everybody in the audience to vote on our poll for you. Please go to our Slido app. I think you know now, hopefully via the barcode, which you will also shortly see on the screen. And this is a word cloud, so please write in whichever words occur to you first. We ask, what measures, conditions, and policies best support the massive deployment of renewable energies in your country? So please answer that specifically for your situation. We want to see about all the different sizes in this one size does not fit all. Now, let's start with a quick review of where your countries or companies stand right now when it comes to the energy transition and where you're heading in future. And please keep your answers, I'm going to say to 2.5 minutes in length because we're starting late here. So I'd be very grateful if you can be concise. And I'll start with you, Minister Yakuba, if I may. On average, just 20% of Niger's population has access to electricity. In rural areas, even less. Currently, 95% of your energy does come from fossil fuels. So energy access clearly is a central aim. And you also want to expand renewables. Are there trade-offs between those goals? And how do you plan to achieve both in the coming years, access and renewable expansion?
Merci. Je voudrais d'abord vous remercier pour l'invitation.
Thank you very much for your invitation. Before I answer your question, I'd like to make a general observation. If we talk about renewables or about the energy transition in Africa, then it is absolutely necessary to consider the realities in Africa. The challenges we have in terms of access to energy and electricity are very high. No continent ever had as big a challenge as we have in Africa today. You said it, only 20% of our population have access to electricity, in rural areas even less. So given those difficulties, we have, however, a big potential. We have a great solar potential, we have wind power and hydropower. But in order to use this potential and make it available to everyone, several conditions must be met. First of all, financing. How can we find financing in order to accompany the deployment of renewables in our countries? The situation of our country and the capabilities of our partners are not sufficient. We have to introduce a financing system that fits the renewables. We plead to have a development bank for renewables. We need to have realistic conditions that are adapted to the renewable energies. We need a tax jurisdiction that matches that. Today, people are working on that outside of Africa, but to import that into Africa is very important. So how can we have zero tax in the renewable sector? That would be a condition. Another condition is that we require a system to reduce the risk of private companies in investments. Everyone knows about the need to invest in renewables, but if at the end of the day there's a real question to the investor about what risk they take if they invest in Uganda or Sierra Leone, the international community has to introduce a system that takes into account the risk of private investors and reduces it. And then, of course, regulation needs to happen so that the investment, the use and the development of energy products is easier and can be done in a harmonized way in a majority of African countries. Maybe I've used up my time now. Maybe I should stop talking. I still have a lot to say, but I'd just like to remind you that the biggest challenge of the international community is to know what the challenges exist in Africa, how high they are, and as they are very high, we need ambitious solutions and large-scale support in order to make progress in developing the renewables. Thank you.
In our prior panel on European-African cooperation, we in fact talked about some interesting de-risking options, including the climate impact platform that has been created by UNDP together with other international partners to try to do exactly what you say. Let me go over to Mr. Shahbazov now, if I may. And Azerbaijan, of course, has enviable renewable energy potential. It's relatively sunny and windy. You have sizable hydro, biomass, and geothermal resources. And I know you are working on a legislative framework for renewables. So what is your plan to systematically tap these very rich resources?
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to underline that the deployment of renewable sources of energy has become one of the priorities of the social-economic development strategy of Azerbaijan, endorsed by the president of Azerbaijan. And at the moment, we are working on the issue of development of renewables in our country, not only to provide our country with the renewable source of energy, but at the same time to make our contribution into the energy security of our immediate neighbors, as well as our partners from the European Commission. Last year in Azerbaijan, Madame Ursula von der Leyen and President Ilham Aliyev signed the Memorandum of Understanding on Strategic Partnership in the field of energy. So Azerbaijan, as it has been doing it for many, many years, providing the global oil market with the crude oil products and petrochemicals. And then since 2 years, we have already started to provide the European energy market with the natural gas. And now we work with the European Commission to expand it to double the volume of natural gas delivered from Azerbaijan to the European Union, as we have been approached by our partners from Europe to increase these volumes as a result of the war between Russia and Ukraine and the overall energy crisis. So we are very strongly engaged in that endeavor. But at the same time, we, Azerbaijan, Georgia, Romania, Hungary, again with the participation of the President of the European Commission, Madame Ursula von der Leyen, signed last year in December in Bucharest 4 lateral agreement on the production and transmission of green energy. So we are going to use the vast potential of green energy. First of all, 157 gigawatts of discovered wind offshore potential in the Caspian Sea to deliver it to the European Union. So in form of electricity, through transmission by the high voltage lines, but also in a form of green gases like hydrogen, ammoniac, and so on. And 4 countries, together with the European Commission and private companies, are working together. And our strategy has been not using the budget, state budget resources to develop the renewable source of energy in the country, but attract the foreign private companies. And we could do that in the recent 4 years, we developed several new legislation acts. And now, through doing that, we created the conducive conditions for the private investors. And as a result of that, within last 2 years, we have signed the implementation agreements with several companies as an entire volume of 25 gigawatts of renewable sources. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me go over to Madam Obayashi now. And unlike Azerbaijan, Japan has more limited natural resources, is densely populated with a complex geography and a fragmented grid. For decades, the country's answer to that unique situation has been nuclear power. What is your institute, the Institute for Renewable Energy, doing to change that? What are you telling the government?
Sorry, as for Japan's area, it is indeed tiny, ranking 62nd in the world. It is also densely populated and relying on imported fuels. But in terms of renewables, we are very rich, I have to say. That of course that we are not rich in the kind of resources underground, but we are rich in the open air. And one research indicates we are 9 times richer than Germany's renewable energy potential. I'm sure this research was done by Japanese researcher. But one of top resources is wind power. We are a tiny country, but if we count its territorial waters and exclusive economic zone, that is 12 times larger than its land. And actually, it is number 6 in the world after the US, Australia, Indonesia, New Zealand, and Canada. So this great potential of offshore wind is now being recognized. Currently, less than 1 gigawatt is installed, but 80 environmental assessment project is going on, a total 45 gigawatt. And many places are overlapped, so 45G is not the number that will be operated soon, but development is underway, and the government plans to create 10 gigawatt and 45 gigawatt pipelines by 2030 and 2040 relatively. Given the changes in the world over the past year, these figures will, of course, need to be revised, but this is no doubt that offshore wind power will become a significant energy resource for Japan. I'm not saying that if there is no land, there is an ocean, but I am saying that every country has renewable energy resources in some ways. And for those kind of utility scale renewables, I'm sure that we need the expansion of the grid system, and then as well as the fair condition of the market is quite important. And then adding that 2 years ago with Agora Energiewende of Germany and Rappenlanta University, we did the 100 renewable energy scenario for Japan. And then it is by 2050. And then that we found the solar PV and the on and offshore wind will provide the 50% and the 50% electricity for Japan. And for the solar power, the half of the solar power that it is accounted like as a total 25 gigawatt, and a half of it has to be the rooftop solar, that the rooftop to household, rooftop to the warehouse and the factories, and then those ones, the buildings, so-called prosumer's power generation integrated with demand size. They are going into the low voltage distributed transmission system along with electric vehicle, batteries, and many types of storage. There are precisely the renewable energy deployment that Japan, with its densely populated areas, is well suited to. So for those kind of installation for the rooftop solar, especially for housing and buildings, that some cities already announced the solar PV obligation in Japan, which will start next year and then 2025. So those kind of obligation will encourage the market to integrate the solar PV into housing and buildings. And then so that if I see this, like a kind of those renewable energy policy has to be integrated with the housing and the building policy as well. We need a higher standard of efficiency or the kind of the renewable energy standard for those housing and buildings. That is the thing that I'm thinking about.
Thank you very much. Let me go over now to Mr. Bertzau for an European perspective, if I may. And this winter, of course, as we discussed this morning, has tested European energy systems through prices spiking, consumers' bills, also industries' bills for both heat and power skyrocketing. I imagine that the former, heat, has hit Danish households pretty hard, given the fact that you tend to have a rather chilly winter. Can you tell us how Denmark has responded?
Yes, and first of all, I would say I really like the headline of this debate. One size does not fit all, but we should focus on how we can gain of each other's differences. And that's why we need to be interconnected to each other and have this kind of dialogue. But in a European perspective, also have a European market where we share our energy and where we are very well connected. If you look at Denmark, and especially the heating sector, we have gained of having a lot of district heating in our energy system. And district heating gives you the opportunity of shifting from one fuel to another if the price is going up. And if you ask a normal natural gas heated up household in Denmark, they would say that they have realized more than doubling the energy prices this winter. And if you ask the district heating customers, they have in average realized a raise of 18%. And that's underlined that the possibility of shifting from one fuel to another give you the resilience and the robustness of your energy system. And you can take this to the electricity sector as well, looking at the different kinds of electricity production. And that's where renewable is a no-brainer for Europe, because it gives you very cheap energy, and if we are connected, we will also have security of supply, even though it's not sunny or there's no wind. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'll go right over to Ms. Gregor. And SMA's core business is the inverter, what you your company calls the brain of each solar power system. You sell that worldwide. SMA, in fact, has been in this business for 40 years, which is a long time in the solar industry. So share your experience, if you would, about the range of approaches to boosting renewable energy, because clearly you've seen a lot of different paths for getting to that goal. And do you wind up working with very different types and scales of solar installations, or is the inverter only suited to one particular use?
Thank you, first of all, for the invitation and to discuss the global energy transition at this panel. As the industry, we are interested in sharing our view to the solar industry and the development. So the increasing climate crisis and the global energy situation are giving energy transition currently more attention. But the road ahead of us is a complex one, and the diverse regions of the globe have unique needs and demand in terms of grid infrastructure and industrial demands or consumer preferences. And as you have said, SMA's core business is the inverter. The inverter is the brain of every solar system. The inverter is one of the most important pieces of the equipment in a solar energy system. It's a device that converts the direct current electricity, which is what a solar panel generates, to an alternating current electricity, which is the electrical grid uses or other devices. So the inverter converts or provides the power electronics between the modules and the electricity consumers. We at SMA have a wide range of inverters with very different power levels for manufacturers and applications for mobile and hydrogen, for example, ensuring that we have the necessary tools to meet a very different customer needs. And we have been pioneers of the solar industry because we started more than 40 years ago in Germany, and we survived very different decades of solar, renewable and energy politics. Meanwhile, we have installed worldwide more than 120 gigawatts, and this in 190 countries, which means that we installed twice as much as the capacity installed in Germany in the last 20 years. And 120 gigawatts, for example, is also the output which is sufficient to supply 40 million households sustainable with solar power. That means 40 million households is the population of Germany, and it's 13.5 of Denmark's households, for example. This is just to illustrate that we have a wide range of experiences and we understand important parts of the complexity. In addition, we have a strong history, especially in rural areas, and provide a premium level of expertise when it comes to grid infrastructure. Since many years, we have been experts and partners to regional energy suppliers when it comes to understanding and needs, especially on-grid and off-grid solutions. So summarize it up. We talk about the 4 main Ds of the solar energy, which makes us an important supporter. First D is decarbonization. Decarbonization is the driver and the beginning of the electrified society. Second D is digitalization, which means integration of different electricity consumers like EV chargers or heat pumps or decentralized infrastructure plus grid connection. And the third D is decentralization. Solar energy can be produced decentralized and independently, especially in rural areas, depending on the local needs, which is a high level of availability. And this brings me to the last and the fourth D, and I'm interested in your opinion because what will happen to our society when energy sovereignty becomes possible for many humans in many nations to an affordable price, because it's also one of the cheapest forms of energy transition. And when the reason for so many military conflicts disappear because of solar energy, it's decentralized and democratically enabled. No more wars over oil or gas in the future world. Solar energy can, beside digitalization, decarbonization and decentralization, also demilitarize our energy needs for the future.
Thank you. Quite a big claim there for solar power. Mr. Blitzstein, Israel has adopted a new energy roadmap last year, I think it was. Funnily enough, I wrote next year, targeting a 40% renewable power share by 2030. What are the most crucial steps that you're taking to get there, especially in the...
30%.
30, okay.
30%.
30. And last year. So 2 corrections in that one. What are the most important steps that you're taking to get there, especially in the infrastructure area for which you are responsible?
Okay. Israel, as you know, is an island of energy. It does not connect to no neighbor, and now not Europe. So we're facing some challenges. Israel is a small country, and it's very crowded, especially in the center. And when we talk about renewable energy, we don't have wind, we don't have rivers, so mainly we are depend only on solar. and we have to combine between solar and storage, and that's all. And if you want, and if I want to mention the three challenges that we are facing, the first is to supply energy security to our citizens, and Israel going to double its needs for electricity by 2050. We have trouble with our grid, with our system, and this is our first challenge. The second is how to combine and how to integrate it between we and our neighbors. We must to build a regional grid. And the third challenge is to connect to Europe. When I say that, I want to mention that Israel have natural gas. And in the last few years, since the war in Ukraine, expecting from Israel to exporting more and more gas. And the fourth challenge is how we manage between the need to export gas and our domestic need in Israel. That are four main challenges for the years to come.
Thank you very much, and we'll come back a little bit later, hopefully, to hear a little bit more about how you're addressing those. Let me now go to Mr. Montes, and we are going to hear him speak in Spanish, so do get those headsets ready. Elsewhere, Mr. Montes, you have called accelerating the energy transition a matter of national security for Cuba. Tell us more about what that means, please, and how you're working to accelerate the shift to renewables.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I would like to give you a bit more context from our country in terms of energy. We're suffering from an embargo to which we are subject from the United States, and that has an impact on the energy sector, on investments, and especially on investments in renewable energies. So we have to take a lot of initiative, and we have to be very creative to mitigate the effect of this embargo. So for us, it's a question of national security to produce 100% of renewable energy. We have a lot of sun and a lot of wind, and sun and wind, fortunately, cannot be subjected to sanctions. We already have some experience. In the past 10 years, the day with the least sun had 60% of the sun levels or sun radiation levels that we usually see. So we have huge energy security, mainly thanks to the levels of solar radiation that we have in Cuba. So our goal of achieving 100% renewables in all areas not only refers to power production, electricity production, but also refers to using renewable energy in domestic households. We already have a share of 10% of solar energy, and that is something that can be developed very quickly. It provides not only security, but it can also be rolled out quickly, and that is our path. We also have difficulty in transport, especially in public transport, due to the embargo. And here we saw how people turn to electric mobility. We already have statistics according to which more than 500,000 tricycles, motorcycles, and cars exist that are operated buy electricity. And we already have 2 semi-nationalized factories where these vehicles are produced. And even when it comes to charging stations, we are already using renewable energy to operate them. The government subsidizes these projects and these systems, and that really makes sense for us because it is more affordable, it's cheaper than renewing the existing systems and grids. We have huge limitations when it comes to expanding grids. And a driver for the development of renewable energies is electromobility and vice versa. There are also companies which already use renewable energies and now focus on electric mobility. And what we have achieved in terms of mobility for people is something that we also want to transfer to solar energy. We want to use hybrid systems, but battery-powered systems, which allow our population to enjoy more energy security. So we're trying to use tariff systems, pricing systems that incentivize people to use renewable energies despite our strongly subsidized energy tariffs. That is something that we cannot phase out just like that because that would lead to conflict.
Thank you. Muchas gracias, Mr. Montes. And a clear message there about renewables and the autonomy and security that they can indeed provide. Let me now, in a second round of questions, with the request for very short answers, if you would, please, because our time is running down, ask all of you to talk a little bit more about the challenges that you face and how you are working to solve them. So if I may, I'll start with Minister Yakuba. And Niger has a weak and patchy electrical grid. You mentioned the fact that many Nigerians do not have access to power. In fact, off-grid solutions clearly could benefit both citizens and local businesses. What are the challenges to boost such systems, and how are you addressing them?
Okay. Les défis pour promouvoir le développement des renouvelables, je crois qu'on doit aller vite. C'est les mêmes que j'ai indiqués.
So we have to expedite the deployment, and we have the same challenges that I mentioned before. We need to have a decentralized system. Our country is very large, very broad, and we need a big system. So we need to advocate for decentralized system or promote those. So we need to offer solutions to the populations to increase electrifications. Secondly, we need to mobilize resources. And third, we need concrete partnerships. We need partnerships in order to expand our capabilities and expand the grid. Those are the challenges that we are faced with. We need to act quickly, and we need to promote the deployment. The other challenge is an international one. It affects all countries in the world. We need to cover the demand. If we take the example of Niger, then the population is indeed very large. It grows by 10% every year. So that's a big level, a big growth that we see. And that's why we need to speed up or ramp up our economy to meet the demand of the people. So we need to build our capabilities, expand reserves, and we can do that thanks to international cooperation. Thank you very much.
Mr. Shahbazov, according to sources, including the International Energy Agency, the share of clean energy in your country's power mix actually has hardly changed over the past 10 years. Renewable energies accounted for only 6% of nationwide electricity generation in 2020 and 2021. What are the main obstacles you face in expanding that share?
Actually, as I have already mentioned in the beginning, we have just started with the reforms in the energy sector just several years ago, and now we have already results. And the results are that in a very short period of time, just within the 3 years, we have contracted already for 470 megawatts of solar and wind energy projects, and they are already under construction. And the third one, it's together with BP, also a very large project of 240 megawatts, which is directed at the decarbonization of oil and gas sector of Azerbaijan. So you know that Azerbaijan is the oil and gas country. But what is the really challenging us is the integration of the bigger amounts of renewable energy in our energy system. So the balancing between the renewable sources of energy and traditional ones. So we work on that. We just attracted 2 companies to Azerbaijan. It is the American company Tetra Tech and the Turkish company EPRA, and we are working on the grid. We are implementing the grid study, trying to enhance the integration level of the renewable sources of energy. 3 years ago, we did it with German company VPC and identified the 1,500 megawatts of integration capacity for our grid, but now we are working further. We want to increase it up to the 2,000. So these are the issues that are on our agenda very high as priority issues.
Thank you very much. And same question to you, Ms. Obayashi, the main challenges that Japan needs to solve. And essentially what I'm asking is, are they more in the regulatory and market shaping arena? Are they more about infrastructure and technology? Give us a sense of, in your unique situation,
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that we need all of them because I think that there's no one silver bullet to expand renewables, speeding up, scaling up, and then providing the predictability of the market is quite difficult with one single policy. And then Japan, we expanded solar PV up to 80 gigawatt by the end of last year. So we have such kind of huge amount of solar PV. And the main driver was the feed-in tariff that we learned from Germany. But of course, feed-in tariff that we have to decrease the tariff, and then we'll need to introduce a competitive market. And then for the competitive market for renewables, we need a transparent playing the level field for the renewable energy that within the power market system. But actually in Japan that we are divided into the 9 large power market area, and then those power market area are not well connected physically and then also the management system. So I think that what Japan need is like an regional interconnection within Japan. Then we have to have the one single market at least, and then also transmission system has to be managed in a collaboration way with the those 9 different power market areas. So we need the kind of a continuous effort for reviewing the power market system that, as I said, that the 9 different areas that we have, basically the regional monopolies are still going on. So we have to introduce the transparent system in the power market and then provide the fairness of the competition in the power market. And then that is a quite important thing that I believe.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Butzo, you talked about Denmark's district heating system. What you didn't tell us about was the fact that the shift toward district heating occurred in response to a crisis, but it was a long ago crisis. It was the energy crisis of the 1970s, in fact. And it was quite a remarkable shift that you made at that time, transitioning away from fossil fuels to this much more flexible system whose advantages you described. Can you tell us whether or which lessons the rest of us could learn in this one-size-does-not-fit-all world from your own experience in dealing with that crisis and the challenges of that time?
Yes, first of all, we have been on this journey for 40, 50 years. So we are well ahead of other European countries. First of all, district heating gives you the possibility of shifting from various kinds of fuels. It gives you security of supply. And if you ask the Danes today, all the Danes that have natural gas, what would you like? They would go for district heating. And when I listen to the debate in other European countries, I hear a lot of negative tones towards district heating, but actually I would say that come to Denmark and look at our experience. And of course there are a lot of don'ts, but many more does, and good examples of creating a sustainable energy system, district heating, with high security of supply. So, as I said in the beginning, we should learn from our differences and also differences in time. Come to Denmark. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Gregor, I'd like to ask you, and we've said again and again, there is no one recipe, and far be it from Europe, for example, to be telling the rest of the world what to do. Nonetheless, I would like to ask you, given the fact that you have at SMA seen a very wide variety of approaches to boosting renewables, are there clear preconditions for success, no matter what scale and type of installation a country or a community is pursuing?
Yes, thank you very much. We see that people, institutions, and governments want to have more participation in their energy supply. And for many people, the supply of energy and electricity is a high good, and they want to be independent and self-sufficient on-grid and off-grid. And I give you 4 examples where we managed these challenges. First of all, a project in Nepal where we set up a microgrid in order to make electricity available for a small village, which is independent now. Another example from Germany, close to the Danish border, we were able to reduce cost of energy supply by installing a large storage system for an entire community. The community can store electricity completely disconnected from the grid as a pioneer of safety and reliability. The third example is where we installed in a brewery in Nicaragua. We have installed an energy system to reduce electricity cost, but also without penetrating the grid, because in a lot of regions in the world, the grid is not ready to receive energy from solar. Interested project is to provide energy for a whole island. We did this, for example, in the Caribbean Sea. We did this also in the French Polynesia, where a whole island based on a microgrid with batteries was made sustainable and included all functions for the grid as black start and also frequency control, because the people living there don't want to rely on any fossil energy. In the end, it's all about the infrastructure, because the grid must be synchronized with the development, and it's about digitalization. We need to bring the energy source and the demand together. and to integrate various sectors from heating to mobile with the brain of the system. This is a question of policy and not a technical solution.
And finally, Mr. Blitzstein, over to you. And the biggest challenges, you outlined a few of them, but if you have to sort of say what is the single biggest one you face, what would it be?
I believe it's the security of energy, but not only for us, but to our whole region. There is now a big opportunity in the renewable energy. It's a time for tie the connection between the nation around us. And if I want to mention a project that I'm in, for example, now Emirates company, Mazda company, built in Jordan plant solar, great plant of solar. I suppose it's around 600 megawatt that will sell the energy to Israel. And Israel built a huge desalination water factory and supply to Jordan water. All that connections. And I want to mention that we visit, the minister and I visit Egypt 1 month ago, and we had good discussions with the authorities there for example, to build a huge wind turbines on the Red Sea, connect them to Jordan and Israel, and by that establish a grid for a regional grid for renewable energy. We are also want to connect to, there is now the interconnector project between Israel and Cyprus through Greece to Europe. And if we can see the whole picture, we can see that the regional grid will connect to Europe, and by that it will increase the energy security, and it's a great vision. We must to understand that if not it must to be a win-win situation for all the countries, not only for Israel. And that's our main aim and goal, and this is the vision for the solution of the security supply of energy to Israel.
It sounds like you're telling us that renewables could help to make Israel a bit less of an energy island. You started your first answer by saying to us that it is an island, but that sounds like an island with some bridges. So many thanks for that. Let us get a quick look now at the answer to our audience word cloud question. If I can get our technical team to please put that up on the screen. So, we had asked, what measures, conditions, and policies best support the massive deployment of renewable energies in your country? And here, the biggest writing, feed-in tariffs, targets, reducing red tape, carbon tax, anti-corruption, education, PPAs, and auctions. And a lot of that goes to what we heard actually in our industry keynote earlier today, doesn't it? He said, design the market, get the frameworks in place, get the regulatory approach in place, get the reliable feed-in tariffs in place, and the business and the investments will come. And that looks like a message that really came home to the audience. But I think education is interesting as well. And I'm just going to throw out to the panel with the request for the mini answer. Anyone who wants to speak to it. How do we make sure that this transition brings jobs? We talk about it a lot, social justice, just transition. It's all about jobs. A number of you have countries with burgeoning youth populations. So who wants to say a word about jobs? I can't ask everybody to do so. We don't have that much time. Anyone? Monsieur Yakuba? l'emploi, jobs.
Ah oui, ok. Non, j'étais en train de lire les réponses qui ont été données.
On a vu éducation.
I was still busy reading the responses on the slide.
Oui, l'éducation, c'est une double condition. C'est une condition pour avoir les compétences qui permettent.
There are two conditions here. You need competencies here in order to introduce renewable energies. At the same time, renewable energies need to help education and development. We have more than 15,000 schools that have no access to electricity. If you want to have good education, you need solar systems that can be deployed in distant rural areas. Let me finally say something that might not sound very diplomatic with regards to renewables. We know what we want. We have a huge potential. We master the technology. The only challenge that we have, the only real challenge, is the money. Give us the finance and the rest we can manage ourselves. That's what I wanted to say.
A very strong message we heard in the Africa-Europe panel as well. Anybody else want to talk about energy and jobs? Please, Mr. Blitzstein. That'll be our last intervention then.
I believe, as I said before, this is a time of opportunity. The new renewable energy is a great field for innovation, for research, for R&D. And if we make a good collaboration, not only inside our countries, but all countries together, we'll make a collaboration on those fields. And we didn't talk about hydrogen and etc. So it's a time of reforms. It's a time of, I don't want to say revolution, but it's almost there. And this is the time for R&D, research, mutual research, and etc. And that will bring the jobs. That will bring the jobs.
Thank you very much. Mr. Butzo, briefly, if you would. I see everybody wants to weigh in now, but we're just going to take a super short one from you and maybe an even shorter one from you. Please, Mr. Butzo.
Thank you. Talking about jobs, I invited you all to Denmark just some minutes ago. Then I would invite you to the city of Esbjerg, a city next to the North Sea. And if you visited Esbjerg 40 years ago, it was an oil and gas city. Today, it's an offshore wind hub for the North Sea. And Danish Shipping made some calculations 2 years ago, saying that 1 gigawatt offshore wind creates 14,000 full-time employees. So there's a lot of jobs in the green transition.
Thank you very much. And if you go to Denmark, go sometime around June 21st, and then you won't need any power at all because it's light practically all night long. Please.
Yeah, of course, that a renewable will bring new jobs and a new economy. But at the same time, I think that the government's very strong, clear message is needed for the transition from conventional energies to renewables. And then the industry will join that movement, and then also the demand side action will occur. So I think that that kind of clear message is needed for the transition.
Ms. Gregor, and then you can have the last word. Ms. Gregor, please, briefly.
Yeah, only one example from our company. We have a solar academy where we educate people, our installers, to be familiar with our technical device. And I can invite you to Kassel. This is in the middle of Germany, or visit our website. There you find a lot of information about our economy and our academy, but we do this academies also abroad. We have this installed in many, many countries to educate our consumers and our customers in the solar energy. So visit our website, you will find more information there.
Thank you. And of course, that's how I got to the link between education and jobs. I was thinking of the great German vocational training system and how it helps retrain workers. Finally, to you.
Thank you very much. Education is critical. It's very important. I think the governments, also the private sector, should take care about that. But at the same time, I like today's panel very much. We have been all very optimistic about the renewable sources of energy, about deployment of the big projects, and we are looking forward. We know that this is our future, but let's have smart energy transition by doing that. That's important. Please do not forget about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much to all of our wonderful panel. Let's give them a warm round of applause. Merci à vous. And thank you also so much to all of our audience, both here and online, for your attention during this very long, intensive day, also for taking part in our various polls of the audience. And because it was long and intensive, I must say I'm a bit relieved that it does not fall to me to try to summarize all that we've heard here at BETD today. Instead, I'm going to hand over now to my colleague Malcolm and the Dialogue Ambassador Hajar for a review of day one across all of our BETD platforms. And after that, dear ladies and gentlemen, you can all look forward to our traditional evening reception if you are with us here in Berlin. It is at the Westhafen Event and Convention Center. If you're attending, and it's a great opportunity to network, so don't miss it, then here's what you need to know. There are buses from 6 p.m. on, in other words, 5 minutes ago, but they keep going, in the protocol courtyard of this building, Protokollhof. You do need your badge to get in, and you should please not forget to bring it again tomorrow in order to be admitted to day 2 of the conference. And with that, I wish everybody a guten Abend, that's good evening in German, and look forward very much to seeing you back here tomorrow morning. Thanks again for your attention. Bye-bye. Thank you.